department, my department. Now coming to the topic, I asked Sheeta that I will do a little different topic than the topics I delivered earlier. So today I will focus on human development. So it's like public policy innovations for human development and how it can be linked to the macroeconomic policies. So this topic, it is beyond GDP paradigm. Usually, policymakers think about the policies and the end result is only to graduate their dreams to the next level of GDP. But this topic is about human development, that you need to take one step ahead to the human development. And Manju mentioned about the gender budgeting that happened prior to the Millennium Development Goals and Human Development Goals envisioned for the countries around. So it was prior to that. So I will explain to you why we should take the subject beyond the GDP, beyond the growth paradigm, and I will explain to you how to measure human development and what are the policy innovations required to do that. So the starting point is justice. The starting point is human rights. So when we study economics in the beginning, we are unable to connect to what is the people matter elements in the economics. It's only the ad hoc configuration of demand and supply, and we are studying and connecting the economics just in a very technical manner. But over the years, you will realize that we can contribute to our country if we become economists by doing people-mattered initiatives, both from monetary policy, fiscal policy, and also the trade policy, globalization, multilateral agencies. So you can connect to it. So let me begin with a small example, which was very worrying when I was doing the gender budgeting, that why we should put a human development lens into the public policy. The reason, I will explain to you a simple incident. We were in Delhi. I'm taking you back to 2010 or 2011. We were in Delhi that time in December, in winter time. I think some of you may be remembering this. In that time, what happened is that in the public transport, in the public space, a girl who is a medical student is going with her boyfriend or friend for a movie. That time it was a Life of Pi movie, and she's coming back in a public transport, in the public bus. Everything is still a public bus, public transport. She was brutally killed. She was raped and killed. And is this a public policy failure? Or is this because the women were out with her friend after sunset? Her dress was not okay. So different kind of talks came about her, the girl who died. Then Justice Verma committee was appointed, ensuring that within 1 month you have to produce a report and you have to come up with a solution about what has happened to this girl. Boys and girls, men and women, they just stormed Delhi, and in India Gate there was a huge protest, and they were asked the government to be on toes and perform because it was a public policy failure. If something happens to that girl or something happens to us, if the other country or state is not safe, it's not that we were at the fault, but we were becoming alert by not going out or taking risks because the safety and security, that is not the prime concern of the government. So when we talk about the public policies, is it only about inflation, interest rates, deficits, or is it also about social justice, empowerment, and human development and human rights? This is a question we need to ask. And people were divided, economists were divided. One group of economists, they always believe that don't complicate the public policy realm by talking about human justice. But other group of economists stormed the space and asked for social justice and people mattered initiative to be incorporated in the macroeconomic framework. You cannot consider these issues just as a sideline issues. If there is a macroeconomic crisis, women and children are affected the most. You cannot say that we will solve the macroeconomic crisis first and then we'll come to the issues related to human development. That sequential, streaming of the public policies have growth consequences and also negative human development consequences. So that's the framework where we are coming from. We need to take these initiatives ahead. So I sat with different UN meetings. So when we asked the low-income countries about what are the dreams, what are the graduation dreams for you, then most of the nations stop at the level of we need to graduate to a high-income country. We have Viksit Bharat 2047 right now, but we are trying to collaborate the TPP, that 20-point program with SDG goals, and we are going to do a new template to reach the Viksit Bharat. The mostly in an IPFP, we are now formulating the proposal how we can make the country to the next level. So that's it. So let's go beyond GDP. Now, what could be the alternative to GDP to measure human development? That's an important question because any policy maker looks for numbers and looks for measurements. What is not measured is not valued and it is not a part of the public policy maker. So we need to measure. So that time, in 1995, for the first time ever, there was a construct built up that is called human development construct. So what exactly is human development? It is like we have infinite choices in front of us, infinite aspirations. When you try to quantify that infinite space, you won't be able to capture everything. So you need to prioritize. And the way it was prioritized was knowledge, health and income were given the priority, and these three elements were given equal importance. That's the way it was constructed. So when we start the measurement issues, when we construct these three dimensions after identifying the dimensions, then we need to look for the variables which can proxy these dimensions. So let's try to look for proxies which can capture the health dimension, knowledge dimension and income. So in the health dimension, life expectancy was used to capture. And in health, in education, it was mean years of schooling. How many years? The completion rate. You are in school. Mean years of schooling, you can take the completion rates and income in PPP. Then giving equal weightage. Till 2010, it was arithmetic mean. Then we started to make the geometric mean and try to arrive at a measure. Now, if the denominator is not constant, then not same, we cannot compare across countries, right? So we need to do a normalization procedure after identifying the proxy or the variables to capture these identified dimensions. And how do you do the normalizing procedure? You identified life expectancy as the variable which capture your health. So to normalize that, you need to have a predetermined minimum and maximum value for that variable. So we assume that 25 years is a minimum years people live and 85 is the maximum years on an average. So 85 minus 25, the denominator will remain constant, maximum minus minimum. And on the numerator, you take the life expectancy of your country, take the deviation of your life expectancy from the minimum you envision predetermined. So it's like x minus x minimum divided by x max minus x min. So that's the way you have to normalize each of these variables and then construct the index. So that's about the human development. Now look at the numbers. Once you construct the human development index, you need to know which country tops the scale. And Scandinavian countries top the scale. Within the Asian countries, we are not great, but we are trying to be around 0.5 or something. We are not doing great. So then you have to ask a research question here. Why the Scandinavian countries are doing better in terms of human development? Why not the South Asian or Asian countries? What are the public policies required to take the country to the next level of human development? So then you will understand in your research question, in your model, you will understand that it is not the economic growth that translates into human development, but the public policy variables are very crucial to translate into human development. So you can take a look into that econometrically by providing the variables growth, variables, public policy variables. Then other control variables you can see, you can do panel, you can do time series, and you need to ask this question, how can you do quantify or quantitatively, how can you prove that public policy variables have got more impact on human development. Human development you can collect the data on HDI. So that's a way you can look into this question empirically using models. Now, when we talk about human development, we should not stop at the level of the aggregate gender neutral indicator. We should get into gender disaggregated indicator as well. So we have another important construct, that is GDI, Gender Development Index. So HDI is gender neutral index, GDI is gender sensitive indicator. So how do you transform the HDI into GDI? You transform the HDI into GDI by incorporating equally distributed equivalent concept. And what exactly is the equally distributed equivalent concept? Like you disaggregate one variable into male and female component, and you do it as a harmonic mean. Harmonic mean in a sense, you put weight, and the weight here is the share of population of the female in the total and male in total. So you put the indicators by putting the weight and do a harmonic mean to translate human development index into a gender sensitive index. So these are the different ways in which you can do the measurement. Now the question, when we talk about contribution of men and women to the economy, we should not stop at the level in which SMA or the systems of national accounts compute the activities in the economy. In the sense, a part of the economic activity remain invisible. So we need to look into those data. These are new kinds of data which is coming up. We need to look into that as well. Because GDP, which captures 8 hours of work, doesn't tell the story, entire story. So how do you capture the 24 hours minus 8 hours? How do you capture that? We don't have anything to measure. So we floated the time use surveys in India and abroad. We have time use survey. This helps us to understand the work-life balance. This also helps to understand what is the statistically invisible portion of the contribution of the work done by men and women. So we have different objectives why we need to do a lifting of the statistical invisibility of the unpaid sector. So in SMA, that is used for computing the GDP, but using the time use is very easy to implement. In the sense, you have to go to the place, villages, and you have to ask the question, tell the story of the chronology of your time. If I ask you the chronology of your time, you can tell me that you get up at particular time in the morning and what are the things you're doing. Then researchers recode these activities done in 24 hours into the systems of national accounts, then extended systems of national accounts based on 1993 SMA. In 1993, there was a recognition by the United Nations Statistical Division that we need to extend the production boundary, the way in which we calculate the GDP, and incorporate many economic activities into the realm so that we can capture the more sensible kind of a economic activity realm or a GDP. So then they kept it as satellite accounts. Then third portion is non-SMA. Non-SMA means, suppose we do many things which are not economic activity in nature. Like we do personal care, we love our kids, we love our friends. We can ask somebody else to love a friend or a kid on our behalf, right? So there are certain things which cannot value, we cannot measure. We are not trying to quantify those activities or those sentiments at all. But what we are trying to measure, value, is the extended SMA as per the 1993 framework. That there are many activities which is not getting included in GDP, but it is economic activity if you look the ILO definition. For example, if you ask your sister or mother whether they are working, we are ignorant and we say no, they are not working. They are sitting at home. No, the kind of work they do at home, it's valued, it's measured now, and it has to be the part of economic policy making, because we are not taking into consideration the kind of stress that is related to the statistically invisible sector. So in Scandinavian countries, if you're seeing that, okay, they have a very good progress, then that is mainly because they have incorporated the autonomous individual concept within the public policy making. Like you believe that you're fundamentally independent of each other and you don't have to get exploited for the way of life to be going ahead. Everybody should live authentic, and if they want to study, if they want to work, nothing should hinder them away from doing that. It is a choice. So if a girl or a boy, they have choice, we should have the public policy and the frameworks to respect that choice and to facilitate that choice. But it doesn't happen the way it should be. So these are important points to be considered when we look into the human development frameworks. Now, let's unpack the existing macroeconomic framework. Why this is not happening? Why this is not a priority? Of course, it's getting prioritized. Now the things are moving. But what was the constraint? So when you look into that, you need to open the macroeconomics framework and understand how it is designed. In India, there is a transition, or in Afghanistan, many countries, there is a transition that happened in the macroeconomic framework from the discretionary space to rules-based space. So everything is now rules. Like if you look into monetary space, we have inflation targeting. If you look into the fiscal policy, we have fiscal rules maintaining a threshold ratio of 3% of GDP. So within this rules-based space, we need to articulate human development. So you can think, what are the entry points within the macroeconomics framework to incorporate the human development concerns? If you don't get any entry points within the existing macroeconomic framework, do you have any policy innovations to incorporate the human development concerns within the macroeconomic framework? So these are the important two questions you need to ask. When you ask these two important questions, you also need to understand that the government doesn't stop at the top level of government. It has to be done at the 3 tiers of government, because it is based on the principle of subsidiarity, the human justice, human development. These decisions are taken at the level closest to the people. So these are the important concerns you need to incorporate when you frame the human development model. Now, I will tell you 2 public policy innovations that has happened. So what exactly is an innovation? First, you put forward the knowledge networking and the country-specific model. That's the beginning phase of an innovation. Then you need to take it to the next level. After doing the model, after doing the research about an innovation, you should frame institutional frameworks in the country to translate these innovations into policies using the institutional frameworks. Then once you do that, then how do you sustain it? You need to do the capacity building. And the capacity building is the 3rd phase. And 4th phase, whatever innovation you try, we are answerable. So monitoring mechanisms should be developed at the 4th level. So this is the way, even when you look into the climate, when you look into the gender, when you look into the human development aspects, the way it is done in the context of India. Now, I am not telling that a particular model, whether it is fiscal federalism, whether it is intergovernmental fiscal transfer, per se is good or bad for human development. But the interaction between how you design the transfers and the institutions matter a lot when we talk about the human development. Now, I mentioned about the legal fiat, like in taking you back again to that incident. Within 30 days, government performed. They came up with a report that is Justice Verma Committee report. In the Verma Committee report, in the first, you must read, at least the preface you must read. It is written that we accept the fact that this incident, it's very unfortunate and it is a public policy failure. That is the first understanding. And second, they were aware of the frameworks done by Amartya Sen related to the human development frameworks. So I heard that the conscience of boys and girls scholars, they couldn't take what has happened to the girl. So they worked with the Verma committee recommendations, and including scholars from Cambridge, Oxford, they worked with the committee and they were aware of the human development frameworks by Amartya Sen. So a public policy report that is aware of an economic framework. So you should read how it is linked. In frameworks you study in the class and the public policy frameworks which apply those theoretical frameworks. So in the sense, Amartya Sen used capability deprivation framework. So any capability deprivation is a human rights issue. Whether it is men, women, transgender, it's a human rights issue. So you have to incorporate that. Then you need to identify the 3 layers which are mentioned in the capability framework. And if you read the commodities and capabilities book of Amartya Sen, there are 3 layers. The first layer is the capabilities. Capabilities means the capability to, it's basically the rights of the entitlements, the right to life, right to health, right to get education, right to have mobility, right to have bodily integrity. It's different capabilities. Functioning is realized capabilities. So how do you study the functionings? By looking into the data. So for each of these dimensions I mentioned, there is a data building process that is happening. The realized capabilities can be captured across gender, across income quintiles, and across geography. So you need to understand that what are the realized capabilities. Then third phase is the commodity space. The commodity space, you read Lord Lekha Desai's one London School of Economics working paper. So he has used this framework to understand the poverty-related issues using capabilities, functionings, and commodity space. So there, the commodity space he articulated as the fiscal policies by dichotomizing it into the ought-to-be budget and the existing budget. So once you have the listing of the capabilities, and if you look into the budget or you look into the existing policies, if it is not matching, then you need to know that you need to build up an ought-to-be budget to reach over there. So that's a framework in which the study was taken up, and the Justice Verma Committee recommendations, that report was aware of it. And in the Justice Verma Committee recommendation, if you're interested in studying this justice or the public policy for human development, you should read the annexure. The annexure, there is a Bill of Rights. In that Bill of Rights, all the dimensions I explained were there. Now, which champion will be there in India to translate these dimensions into a public policy is what we are waiting for. And so far, the monetary policy has not spoken about the integrating human development concerns within the monetary macro framework. Why? Like earlier I mentioned, it is all because it is a strict monetary policy rule that's operating in India. What is the monetary policy rule? We have inflation targeting. That's a monetary policy rule. And inflation targeting is built on the basis of the anchor of inflation you design for your country. Then inflationary expectations you float, and the output gap. And the output gap is the difference between your potential output and the actual output. So based on this, we frame the monetary policy in the economy. So can you visualize an entry point within the monetary policy rule for human development? The potential GDP, which is computed based on the econometric methodology by taking the series of GDP, taking out the cyclicality, and call the trend as potential by the econometricians, whether they are incorporating the statistically invisible sector which I talked about a moment back. No. So the potential is not the real potential what we are measuring. And the existing GDP, that is also partial in nature. Then where do you incorporate it? In native economies, in macroeconomics we studied, in native economies, they emphasize on employment. But in India, that output gap variable is GDP. So where do you enter when you talk about beyond GDP paradigm, when we talk about the monetary macro? So the economists try to incorporate climate change concerns within the monetary macro framework, but not at human development. So how should you do the climate change? They have taken the portfolio. The first is the statutory liquidity ratio you need to give. Then you have the bond financing. Then you have priority sector lending. Priority sector lending was prioritized incorporating a thematic, infrastructure financing for green infrastructure. Within the bond financing, again they incorporated climate bonds. So there are different ways in which they unpacked the existing framework of the monetary policy to incorporate the human development concern, climate concerns. Human development concerns were attempted by Argentina, just like the way I call this climate bonds, they have gender bonds. They incorporated gender bonds. So there are different ways in which you can ask this question. Second important question is, when we talk about the monetary macro, we need to look into the cost versus access to the credit. And the cost, of course, every quarterly we get the monetary policy committee decisions on the interest rate management. But for men and women, what matters most? The access to credit that comes through liquidity guidance and the way we have digital infrastructure to access the credit. So whether that's ready for everybody, we need to ask this question. Otherwise, economic policy is not about the people who can access when we frame the policies based on equality paradigm. The people, they are not able to come and access because it's equality. Then we need to ask the question, why a certain group of people are not able to access these policies, and what could be the policies for these people to come and access the public service provisioning, credit or monetary or fiscal concerns. So then we have got a role to play, that we need to remove this unfreedom. In Amartya Sen's vocabulary, we need to remove this unfreedom so that the people can come and access it. So what should be the change in the policy making process so that everybody will access equally? That's very important to ask. Look at the fiscal policy. Again, it's a rule-based fiscal policy. The discretion is very less. So when we talk about this fiscal policy, high debt and the high deficit economy, in the low interest regime, are we speaking about the human development related concerns? These are the questions we need to ask. Or are we stopping at the level in which, okay, this will realize into economic growth recovery process? It's a service sector, agriculture, manufacturing. It's like a growth recovery process. No, we need to unpack that sectorally. Even mining, the critical, mineral mission we have announced last budget, every sector has got its own human development consequences, which I can tell you later. Now, to make it more interactive, I will stop here and give you a moment to ask me questions. And the next part I will present you after listening to a few questions so that I understand that we are pitching, we are on the same page, where we are, we will be able to understand. So the floor is open for questions. Okay, we have a roving mic. Rajesh, right? Hari will have. Hari is first year, right? Okay. Finance, economics. Finance. Okay. Start. If you have a question. Right. You were very active and I thought you have questions. Yeah? Hello, Hari. Give me a paper.
It's good. My name is Alina Pia. I'm second year economics student. It's been a lot of years now that why is there any country in the world which included this unpaid household work in the GDP of that country? Is there any country like that? I wish to know. And if so, why India is not still able to copy that model in India, and why we are not able to measure the unpaid household work? So we can increase our GDP and the work-life balance can be an issue if we are able to incorporate it into our GDP. So what are the challenges that India faces while incorporating this unpaid household work into the GDP of India?
Sure. One more question? No? Yeah, thank you so much. Brilliant.
Thank you.
Yeah. the girl next to you. You have a question? Please.
My name is Fasnia, second year economics. So I need to hear from you more about the gender budgeting.
Sure.
Always you talk about that topic, but more about that.
Sure, I will do that. Thank you.
Thank you.
First year students, yeah?
Ma'am, my name is Accentuate. I am from first year student. My question is, I have a doubt about, like, I had a assignment and I got a topic called HDI indicators in India. So from that, I just read about some Wikipedia or just any other source from Google, and I used to know something like who introduced HDI. Like there is two names have been indicated by many sources. They say that Mehboob Haq from Pakistan and Amartya Sen. There are some sources say that it is Mehboob Haq, and some sources say that both of them. So who is the who introduced HDI, and why others says that Amartya Sen is also included by contributing something in HDI. So I have a doubt on that.
Sure, I'll do that.
Thank you.
Hari, with your friend, can you get me that whiteboard here? I will explain to you this whiteboard with the help of your friend. Somebody can help you. Then, let me take Hari's question because it doesn't mean that Alina and Fuzia, your quiz is very relevant. But he asked me the fundamental question about reference. The technical notes are there in UNDP, Human Development Reports. So that technical notes, that is very important to look into. I answered Hari's question first. The technical notes of UNDP, you need to look into that. Anybody can open that for me? UNDP technical notes. You can just Google it. UNDP technical notes HDI. Okay. Yeah, thank you. So, let me take these questions first and then we will have the next round. So these questions are asked about, extending the production boundary, that Alina's question of incorporating the unpaid. Fuzia's question about gender budgeting, the TFM tool. It's a public financial management tool to incorporate the human development concerns. And Hari's question about the HDI, when you're asked to do the assignment on HDI, how you should be taking it ahead. So, sequentially, let me begin with the gender neutral HDI and take it down to the questions you asked by